Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each of the episodes against each other. Today's episode is Grey's Anatomy Season 2, Episode 4, Deny, Deny, Deny. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief summary to remind us what happens within the episode before we rank it. So we'll start the recap with the main patients of the episode. The first patient is a man who comes in who happens to have been shot in the head, but is otherwise fine, not even really bleeding that much, just looks like he has some sort of burn mark on his forehead. And at first, the doctors aren't even really sure that he actually was shot. And then they also, because he claims to have shot himself, want him to go through psych evaluations, etc. And they take him for a CT scan where they are able to see that, in fact, there is actually a bullet inside of his head. And while they are waiting for the surgery time, he and his wife are overheard having a bit of a whispered yelling match where it is revealed that he cheated and she decided to shoot him in the head. And so basically, while he's in surgery, the police come by, they have to talk to her. She confesses and is obviously taken away by them. When he comes out of the surgery, this actually upsets him because he didn't really blame her, because he says there's nothing more stupid than cheating on the woman that you love. And so he obviously regretted his actions and didn't want her to get in trouble for shooting him, which is why he had claimed from the start that he had shot himself in the head instead of her. We then have a person named Jeremiah who has been Bailey's patient for the last 5 years since she became an intern, who had cystic fibrosis and is having health complications, and fitting with the theme of denial, because he knows the outcome of his illness, has never really allowed his parents to be called until he's been better. And even with this surgery, he signs a do not resuscitate order and tells Bailey not to call his parents. They then, while they're in the surgery, looking at his pancreas, he unfortunately does pass away. Bailey ignores the DNR, trying to resuscitate him anyways, however, it does not work. And at the end, she then ends up having to phone his parents and let them know that he has passed on. And this is very emotional for her because she got too attached to the patient, having helped him for the last 5 years. The next one, of course, was a woman, Kalpana, I think her name was, that basically has Munchausen's and was faking an illness and taking a drug in order to induce heart arrhythmias, which was discovered by Christina based on her hospital records of having visited multiple hospitals and having multiple issues, etc. But Brooke and Izzy only believe it after they find out during the operation where they are testing like the heart's electrical signals that her urine turned blue, so they do a specialized drug test and realize that she has been taking a medication to induce the arrhythmias in order to get the attention being sick provides, and so she is transferred to the psych ward. We then, of course, have Meredith's mother, Ellis, who there's not really any change or progress made, just that she keeps escaping from her room because she's in a hospital, and with her Alzheimer's, she believes she's still working there because she's stuck in the past. She keeps leaving to go to surgeries and whatnot, and after being in like one of the scrub rooms, Richard comes and finds her, and only after kissing him does she kind of return to lucidity and realize that she's not where she's supposed to be. And unfortunately, the next step that they have to take, because she keeps escaping, is to restrain her, which Richard hesitates to do, so George comes in and helps him to do it himself. We then have Christina, who is also a patient, and she's having difficulty with her emotions. She's basically blocking all of her emotions. She says she's fine. She thinks she's fine. She's frustrated with her mother, which is why she decides to basically go AWOL in the hospital as well and steals patient charts, including the Munchausen's patient, which is where she determines that diagnosis, which Izzy later informs her that she was right. And once she is in, and she fights with Burke a few times about having kept the pregnancy a secret, though she does helpfully point out to him that he was the one who ended it with her and didn't seem to care much about it. But then Izzy comes in and tells Christina she was right, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. She starts crying and is unable to stop as all of the emotions catch up with her. And even her mother says that she was sure that she was going to break at some point. And then Burke, who is on his way home, sees Christina in bed crying, and he basically gets in and holds her. And based on the look on the mother's face, she's figured out who the father of the baby is, because Christina was not letting her know that beforehand. We then have Izzy and Alex, who've been flirty recently, um, making eyes at each other at a bar in the opening scene, and then Izzy kind of works up the courage to try to ask Alex out, and he basically says she's really bad at it, asks her out instead, and then at the end of the episode, they meet up for dinner. However, because Alex has received word from Richard that one of the tests that he had taken, the results were late coming out because of when he took the test, but he had failed it and he has to retake that test. And he's fine for now to continue practicing, but if he was to fail the test the second time, he would no longer be able to be a practicing doctor and would be kicked out of the program. And so when he shows up to the date with Izzy, she can tell that something's wrong and that he's not himself, but he denies it. And they go on their date, though she looks unsure. And then we have our final little bit of drama in that Addison, basically to force Derek to start making a choice, gives him divorce papers that she hasn't signed yet, saying that if he signs it, she will, and she will leave if there's no chance for them. But if there's even a little bit of chance, she doesn't want to leave. She even tells Meredith after Jeremiah's surgery that if there is even the slightest chance that Derek still wants her, she's not going to leave Seattle. And we see Derek kind of with the divorce papers throughout the episode. At first, he wants to sign them immediately, but then when she says that, like, asks him if he ever thought that even though, she's an adulterer and Satanist, as he calls her, that she could still be the love of his life. And then after dealing with the patient who cheated and was shot in the head for it, but accepts that he was shot in the head for it as being like fair because he thinks it's the stupidest thing he's ever done to cheat on the woman he loves. Derek starts to second guess, so he doesn't end up signing the papers once he reads them, which when Meredith and him enter the bar at the end of the episode, he drops them. She picks them up, sees that he hasn't signed them, and that is where we end this episode. All right, so a lot happened, and now it's time to rank the episode. We rank on two lists on the channel, the mostly objective ranking list, which is absent emotion, and then the personal ranking list, which of course is entirely my opinion and emotional response to the episode. So we'll start with our mostly objective rank values, and I highlighted the ones I felt applied to this episode. The first one, of course, is that there was some supporting relationship development, which is that Izzy asks out Alex poorly, so he then asks her out. They agree to go to dinner, and then at the end of the episode, they do meet up to go out to dinner. So they're going on their first date. We then have, kind of as an honorable mention, because it's induced by being in the past, we learn that, well, it's been hinted at that Richard and Ellis had an affair when they were younger, Ellis being, well, not being, but having Alzheimer's, kisses Richard, showing that in fact they did in fact have an affair, but they weren't currently having an affair. So that's why they're an honorable mention. But either way, that is 2 points. We then get our multi-season main character development, which is where Karev finds out that he needs to retake a test in order to continue as a doctor, which is a pretty big a development for his career, which is worth 4 points. We then have the strong plot concept, which is the guy who was shot in the head, because getting shot in the head and actually surviving it, and especially with like no, seemingly no consequences for him, at least functionally, is incredible. And it's a very interesting thought, and I like the way that it kind of parallels with like Addison and Derek, how he had cheated on his wife and that's what got him shot in the end. You know, Derek ran, he didn't shoot Addison, but obviously when the roles are reversed, it can happen. But I felt that that was a very strong concept and interesting to watch play out in parallel to, like I said, the situation that's currently unfolding between Addison and Derek. I debated whether it would count or not. I put in main relationship development as well, because at the end, like throughout the episode, Christina kind of confronts Burke about the fact that he's the one who broke up with her before she had a chance to tell him about the baby. He's upset with her for not telling him about the baby, but then at the end of the episode, you know, she's crying, it's all hitting her, and he, instead of going home, basically crawls into her hospital bed and comforts her in a way that a partner would, in my opinion. So I consider that a development, and knowing the future, we know that they are not done, so I feel like this is a turning point to bring them back into a positive direction, and that is why I decided ultimately to give it the 4 points. Which then brings us to our negatives. So in this episode, we obviously have Bailey having a strong connection to her patient. He was one of her first patients as an intern. She's been taking care of him the last 5 years since she was herself an intern. And he does put in a no extraordinary measures, no DNR, and yet she then decides to ignore that, and I understand with the emotion of it why she would do so, especially in a drama for um like in a drama show, why that would be ignored. However, obviously they've done this before on the show, but that is not something that doctors should be doing. If somebody signs while lucid and fully aware of their actions a DNR, then I do believe that that should be honored, even if you are emotional at the time that they are passing. It's the patient's wishes. It's your job as a doctor to honor those wishes. So, negative messaging and behavior, and that is -2. And then, of course, we have our main relationship regression or breakup, which, of course, has to do with our triangle. So obviously we have Addison giving the divorce papers to Derek, which would officially end any chance they have at a relationship. So definitely a regression there. But Derek doesn't sign the papers, so you could consider that maybe a positive. However, on Meredith's side, that would be a very negative one because, you know, obviously she wants Derek to sign the papers so that he can be with her. We then have Addison telling Meredith that if there's even the slightest chance Derek still wants her, that she's not going to leave Seattle, which of course is negative for Meredith as well. Derek isn't making a choice, so he's not developing either relationship at this point, but both of them are regressing because everybody's up in the air, nobody knows what's going on. And so that is why it is a regression or breakup, and that is, of course, -3 points, which brings us to a total of 9 points out of 10 objectively for this episode. And so a quick reminder of our season 2 rankings so far on our mostly objective ranking. In first place, we have Make Me Lose Control. Second, Deny, Deny, Deny. Third, Enough is Enough. And then in fourth place is Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. Which brings us, of course, to the personal ranking. Now, obviously, a lot happened in this episode. There was a lot to follow. There was, and yet, for all that there was a lot to follow and a lot happening, I still didn't feel like there was as much development and progress on like some of the side storylines as there had been in previous episodes. Like we have Ellis, she's mostly in a holding pattern at this point. We then have a few of the other patients, and while one of those was really interesting, we did get a little bit more with Bailey, and I do like Bailey. I think she has some of the best lines. Like her script is probably one of the best, if not the best, in the show at this point. So, like at the beginning, everybody's kind of at the bar before their shift, and Derek comes in and sits near her and basically confides in Bailey about, the Meredith Addison situation and how and basically like his perspective of it, and she just says like while drinking like you're so damn stupid because obviously he's thinking he's going to be with Meredith, Addison will leave and things will go back to the way they were and everything's going to be all happy, but obviously that's not what happens, and the fact that he hesitates and then does not sign the divorce papers also is very telling of exactly where he is. There's even an elevator scene with Bailey and Derek where Derek's kind of upset that she's accepted a consultation from Addison for the cystic fibrosis patient, even though Addison, before she chose her specialty, did do work with um, cystic fibrosis as a disease and therefore is fully qualified to help out on the case because it's making her stay in Seattle. And Bailey basically tells him like she's thinking about her patient. She's not thinking about the fact that he got himself stuck between two very fine women, that he needs to make a choice and that she's not going to make it for him, is essentially what it boils down to, which I like. Obviously, there's Christina who's breaking all of her emotions that she's been denying having. They come out. Denial is the theme of the episode. But like I said, like none of the patients, the one was very interesting. And we got to see more about Bailey, like I said, but again, it doesn't feel like they were, for all that there was so much happening, it didn't feel like much happened at all from like an emotional standpoint. Like I was watching and I'm like, wow, there's a lot happening here, but I don't feel much about anything that's happening. I feel like everything's kind of in a holding pattern. You know, it's really like the end of the episode where things were getting set up kind of for future episodes. You know, Alex finds out about his test, which is going to impact his date with Izzy, probably. But we aren't going to find out how it impacted it until the next episode. Meredith is finding out about the papers not being signed. But again, it's right at the end of the episode. We don't know how that's going to impact the future episodes. We'll have to find that out in a future episode. We have Addison obviously giving the papers, and she doesn't know they haven't been signed yet. But once she finds out they haven't been signed, obviously that's going to impact her relationship with Derek. We then have, you know, Christine at the end of the episode finally letting her emotions out and acknowledging she has them. And Bert coming in and comforting her. And we see the mom looking, realizing who the father of the baby is. But again, we don't know how that's affecting the relationship until the future. So a lot happened, but a lot also didn't really happen. Either way, it was still an entertaining episode. It was still very interesting. There was a lot that happened, and no one can deny that. And I did enjoy everything that did happen. I do like where we are being set up to go to the future. So I decided to give it an 8 out of 10 ranking personally, which brings our season 2 rankings so far to: in first place, Make Me Lose Control; second, Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head; third place is this episode, Deny, Deny, Deny; and then in fourth we have Enough is Enough. And that then brings us to our series ranking so far, which on our mostly objective ranking, a reminder of where we ended on season 1 was 77.78%. And so far for season 2, we have accumulated 30 out of 270 points. On our personal ranking side, season 1 ended with 66.67% as its final score. And so far for season 2, we have accumulated 33 points out of 270. So with that, we've now rewatched and ranked Grey's Anatomy Season 2, Episode 4, Deny, Deny, Deny. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.